Welcome to Visual Radio, Downriver in Search of David Ackles by Mark Brend. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I am well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We have a lot of fun here. I'm interested in why you chose David Ackles.
Well, the short answer is I've been a fan for 40 years, since I discovered his first album and bought it on spec, not knowing who he was. I think he's a really talented singer-songwriter, and he's always intrigued me. I've always been intrigued in particular by the gap between his obvious talent and his success or lack of it commercially.
Well, this record industry is insane. I like that A&M Records took Joan Armatrading and believed in her. And that's what we need. And they believed in what Warner Brothers believed in Fleetwood Mac. And look how long it took for them to go from, they had a good run early. They were selling records, but then they were phenomenal. When record labels believe in an artist and give them the 10 album deal, they often can break them through, even with a hit single for Dr. John. Or, one hit wonder, but he's not, because we all know who Dr. John was. So important.
Yeah. Well, I think David Ackles was interesting because, in fact, because his first three albums were with Elektra, and they did believe in him. And he did those three albums. They supported him. For the first and third albums in particular, they put a lot of effort into promotion, but the records didn't sell. And David Ackles, I understand, could have held out to do another album with Elektra, but he and Jack Holtzman, who ran the label, came to a mutual agreement that it was best that David try elsewhere. So off he went to Columbia, which didn't work out.
And that was the same case for the Young Rascals. They went to Columbia and the hits stopped coming.
Yeah. Well, something that, like starting with at Elektra, which was a relatively small label in the time that David Ackles was there, it still had this family feel. Everyone knew each other. You could go into the office and so on. But Columbia, of course, is a big entertainment conglomerate, and David Ackles, when he was there, didn't know a soul. He was signed by Clive Davis, who was then booted out of the company shortly after, and David Ackles literally didn't know anyone in Columbia at all, which didn't stand him in good stead, obviously.
No, and Elektra was a perfect label for him, actually. You have Tom Rush and all these great people.
Yeah, I think so. It was both in terms of the size of the label and musically. Elektra was very adventurous at that time, willing to take on people who didn't fit into any comfortable niche, which David didn't. But also it had a reputation for the emerging singer-songwriters, and David Ackles was kind of put into that group along with Tom Rush, who you've mentioned, Tim Buckley, Fred Neil. He was quite different from them in many ways, but that was the closest he got to finding a niche in the business, I think.
Yeah, and then the Doors and the Queen came along, and everything changed.
Yes, well, the Doors started to sell a lot of records not long before David Ackles signed to Elektra, so I think that was probably a boom time for the company. They were making money, but it still felt like an independent label. It still felt quite small and quite close. I think by the time Queen came along, David Ackles had moved on, or shortly afterwards anyway.
All right, and there you go with corporate rock and Warner Elektra Atlantic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So the first album you pick up on spec, and what drew you to him while listening to the record?
Well, I just think it's really intriguing songwriting. It's, for anyone who doesn't know, it's piano based. He's a piano playing singer-songwriter, and that first album has a lot of organ on it. The organ is the lead instrument, really, played by a guy called Michael Fonfara, who had quite a long career, played later with Lou Reed. I just think the songwriting was really intriguing. There were some songs on there that I couldn't imagine anyone else ever writing, really. There's one called His Name is Andrew, for example. about an organ-based piece about a man who loses his faith, and it's very intense and very dramatic, and it really drew me in, and I've been fascinated ever since.
I saw many Lou Reed concert with fanfare, so
Okay,
that's
right.
I didn't know he. Wow, that's great. He played with David.
Yeah, yeah, on that first album, yeah.
So we have a question we ask, and I don't know if you know the answer, but we always ask the demo that got the deal. Do you know if they were demos that got the deal for David Ackles with Elektra?
It wasn't demos, no. What happened was that David Ackles had been at University of Southern California with David Anderley, and they were friends, and they performed together in a couple of student theatre productions, and they lost contact, and then they bumped into each other. And as I understand it, they literally just bumped into each other on the street somewhere. And by that time, David Anderley had just started work for Elektra in an A&R capacity, and they got talking, and David went to David Anderley's house or somebody else's house, I'm not quite sure, and played him some songs live and said, "This is what I've got. What do you think?" And he was signed very quickly. And as best as I can tell, David Ackles had never recorded a demo at that point, and so he then went on to record some demos because the idea was he would be a songwriter for other artists. And when he recorded those demos, that was the first time he'd ever been in a studio.
So have those demos ever been released?
Well, that's a bit of a. I think I can't be absolutely certain, and I try to be clear about this in my book about David Ackles. What I think is that from things that David Anderley said is that some of the demos were developed into the finished tracks that we hear on the record. So other instrumentation was overlaid on the demos after, but they started out some of the songs as just piano and vocal demos.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'll just throw this in. I met David Anderley and Gil Friesen. They're both gone now
Mm.
in the offices of A&M Records in '86.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, David Anderley is a fascinating guy. I mean, by the time he'd come to Elektra, he'd already worked with the Beach Boys. I think he'd signed the Mothers of Invention. He'd worked with Van Dyke Parks. So he was obviously a man who could, with an eye for unusual talent, and he certainly picked that up with David Ackles.
And where he knew him even more so is probably more, um, inclined to sign him.
Yes, yes, that's right. Yeah, I'm sure that helped. Yeah.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Exeter in Devon, which is in southwest England.
Wow. So the book is out in England and it's out in America as well.
It's coming out in England this Friday and in America in 2 weeks, I think, or the 18th of August or something like that.
Oh, good. We got a preview here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Advanced, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you. Um, how'd you
Well,
get into this?
I'm somebody who's been involved in music one way or another for most of my life, and I've written several books about music in the past. And the first book I wrote about music was called American Troubadours, and that was a collection of like miniature biographies of some of the people we've already talked about, like Tom Rush, and David Ackles was one of those chapters, actually. And I've always wanted to write a book just about Ackles, and have finally got round to it now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Tom's been on the show, I think, 5 times now.
Okay, yeah, a great artist. Yeah, it's actually it's interesting that the 9 people in the book American Troubadours, when I wrote it, 6 of them were still alive, but Tom Rush is now the only guy left out of those 9 people.
Oh my God, he's from around here. I'm in Massachusetts,
Okay, right, yes, of
so
course, yeah,
he's up on the North Shore. So when Tom Rush and I do interviews now, we've been doing them for 20 years. It's just like a phone call. It's
yeah,
just like we just pick up where we left off. It's really great, and I find it fascinating because as they get to know me, I get more secrets and good stuff, and into the interviews, and they're just having a happy time with me, and I like that.
yeah, that must be
As
great.
we're
Uh,
doing now.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, Tom Rush's first, not first album, Tom Rush's classic album, The Circle Game, absolutely brilliant record. And in fact, came out very shortly before David Ackles' first album. So that in my mind, that was a real golden period for Elektra singer-songwriters.
Oh yeah. Are you thinking of coming to America to promote the book?
I doubt the budget will extend that far. I'd love to.
Uh,
I don't think it will.
how will the touring go in England?
Well, it won't be touring. It'll be things like this. There aren't any personal appearances, but I'm doing quite a lot of radio and podcasts, and hopefully we're getting quite a lot of press as well.
You know, it's great because when you do these things, you go into Google and all of a sudden it comes up, and I'm honored that we have a preview because it'll people helps people find it. I put it on my Substack.
Yes, yes, I noticed that. Yeah, well, I'm grateful for your interest. We all are. We really appreciate it.
You know, it's fascinating stuff, and I'm a Lou Reed devotee, and
Okay.
so when you said fanfara, oh wow, um, and I assume that you have that same fondness for Ackles, kind of that I have for Lou. Um,
Well, yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of artists that I'm very keen on, and I'm a big Lou Reed fan as well, actually. Funnily enough, with Lou Reed, I got into him through his solo work before the Velvet Underground. So I heard him solo before the Velvets, which is quite unusual, I think.
right.
And, but yeah, so David Ackles is a has been a big favorite of mine. But one thing that's interesting about David Ackles is because he only made 4 albums, that it's a pretty small body of work, so you can really familiarize yourself with it. Whereas with somebody like Lou Reed, who was working for decades and awful lot of records, it can be quite hard to keep up with it all, really. But yes, David Ackles has been a big interest of mine for many years now.
I asked Lou, what was the demo that got the deal? He said, Joe, it was Andy Warhol. There was no demo. But if we
Okay.
had, he said, but if we had a demo, I'm sure you'd have a copy. It was a really nice acknowledgement of he knew how devoted I was to him. But you can go into BMI and ASCAP's websites and look up Lou Reed or David Ackles, and sometimes the demos are separate from the album song. Sometimes,
Hmm.
but if they refurbish them or added instruments, it's going to be the same title up there. Yes. But with Lou Reed, they just put out all the stuff he did at Pickwick.
Yes. Yeah.
And I only had 2 titles for years on the vinyl. They would put out these crazy compilations, and Lou and John Cale were behind some of the, like Sneaky
Uh,
Pete,
yeah.
and I talked to Lou about Cycle Annie. I said that is a great song. He goes, it is. He goes, Cycle Annie is a great song, but it's so great that these, that's why when we're talking about David Ackles, I'm thinking, wow, if they're the demos, the production demos, it might be nice for the fans.
Well, yes, it would. I mean, what setting aside demos, there are a lot of studio outtakes for David Ackles, a lot,
Oh,
and there are a lot of. I've heard about 3 hours of good quality live recordings, and there are also lots of songwriting demos after his recording career ended, because when he couldn't get another record deal, he was still signed to publishing as a songwriter, and he tried to play songs with other people and kept on writing for several years after his record deal ended. So that there is a huge wealth of unreleased David Ackles material out there, some of which I've heard, not all of it by any means.
that's music to my ears, especially the live albums.
Yes.
Um,
Well, he played. You might well know about this, but he played several residencies at a place called Canterbury House, and in Ann Arbor, and it was an interesting venue. It was a 100-seater coffee house, but everyone played there: Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Tim Buckley, and for some reason they recorded all the sets live. Straight to reel, and I think both Joni Mitchell and Neil Young have released some of that material, but there are two recordings of quite lengthy recordings of David Ackles from the Canterbury House.
that's marvelous.
Yeah.
Does any film exist?
A little bit, yeah. There was he came, sadly, he appeared on the BBC on BBC TV 3 times, but that film has gone. Although some of the audio survives. He did a Norwegian TV special, played 4 songs, and was interviewed in 1968. That's around, and you can find it online actually. And then he did an in concert thing in '73 in America, which exists in that. There's a copy of it in an archive. It's I think a half an hour show, and he plays about 10 songs, 8 songs, something like that.
I mean, it's fascinating to see that, fragments of brilliance can be captured.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it is great, and as with many people who were working then, if you it wasn't really. These days almost everything survives digitally, doesn't it? But in those days, particularly on British TV, for example, it was very common practice to just wipe the tapes after broadcast and use them again because they were
Right.
expensive. And so his British TV appearances, which were live in the studios, are gone, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, Beatles, Rolling Stones, it was crazy.
Yeah,
Like in the
yeah,
importance of this.
yeah.
Um, but I had this question in my head, and it's kind of evaporating. Sorry. Um, so I'm sorry, I don't usually have a mental lapse,
That's okay.
but it's been a long day. The
Well,
book, so the book can bring some reinterest in him. And, it would be great to do a PBS special on an artist like this.
Well, it certainly would. I mean, I do hope that the book does generate some interest. I mean, he is a forgotten figure, and he was. It's interesting in Britain, particularly in the late '60s. He was reasonably well known. He didn't sell many records, but his songs were covered quite a bit, and he was in the music press a lot. And then in 1972, when American Gothic, his third album, came out, he got fantastic reviews in America and in Britain, like people saying this is one of the best albums ever made. It was that effusive. But since then, he has slipped from consciousness, I think, and I do hope that the book elevates his profile a little bit.
I caught the butterfly. I got the question back.
Okay.
I was talking to Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, and I'm like, I love bootlegs. I love underground tapes, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, Ian, do you like the unreleased recordings? Oh no, I don't. No, I don't like that. It's he likes to be on top of the releases. So then I see the concert that night, and he goes into Aqualung, and there's 200 telephones up in the air. His worst nightmare, right? Because he's being recorded,
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can do nowadays.
No, well, it's interesting. I saw Bob Dylan play a couple of years ago when he was in the UK, and his gigs. I don't know if it's still the case, but you have to leave your phones in little pouches at the door, so you can't take them in. And yet somehow the next day on YouTube there are clips of the show, so people are smuggling in phones, putting on a clip on YouTube, and it is you can't control it, even if you're taking people's phones.
Well, I was invited to Lou Reed's wake, which was a great honor, December of 2009. I forget. No, 2000, 2013.
Okay.
2013 in December, they had the wake 50 days after his passing
Hmm.
for some Buddhist ritual, and it was at the um in Harlem in New York at that wonderful club. Can you? My brain is unbelievable in Harlem at the R&B club, the famous one, the Apollo. So Lou
Okay.
Reed has Laurie Anderson had the wake at the Apollo, and
Hmm.
William Defoe is sitting over there, and Yoko Ono's walking down the aisle, and it's like it was called the hottest ticket in New York, and who knew, right? You can go on YouTube and someone taped it was a concert.
Hmm.
Patti Smith and Blondie was magnificent, doing White Light, White Heat. But these things, I think that was an important show, even though it was respectful. It was awake. It was a concert,
Yeah.
And it was almost like a Lou Reed concert because Laurie's playing the Pickwick Records video of Heroin, which no one ever seen. And so you felt Lou was in the room with these friends of his performing.
Hmm.
But then it shows up on YouTube, and I was so thankful of that. And then Ian Hunter um, played with Martha Hoople again, and Steve
Yeah.
Hawley's a dear friend, his drummer. And so we went to the show, and there are like 2 videos of the full concert of Ian Hunter in Boston with Martha Hoople. And it's like, this is amazing that you can actually create a documentary DVD with the stuff the audience is. Well,
Yes.
didn't
Yeah.
Shakespeare, wasn't that people transcribing from the audience some of
I don't know.
Shakespeare's works?
I wouldn't know, but yeah, I can see the parallel. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's that great book on bootlegs, and I think the Shakespeare stuff, either some of the actors and actresses had the scripts, and some of the audience were writing down, and it's like the bootlegs of the classical music in the early 20th century, and then rock and roll, of course.
Mm, mm, yeah.
It's my long way of saying I'm so happy David Ackles has such a great body of work that's not been out there yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is great work you do. Can you tell me about your second book?
Second, I'm slightly losing track of the order of them now. I did a book on very early electronic music in film and TV called The Sound of Tomorrow. That was a book about like, for example, use of theremins in science fiction films, that type of thing. I did a book on Lowell George of Little Feat,
Oh, yes.
long time ago. It isn't just about music, but those are a few of the music books I've done.
Incredible. I'm so happy you did this book on David. Anything else you want to add to this?
Not really, no. I'm grateful for your interest. I hope that the book prompts people to go and listen to David Ackles' music a bit more. It's not physically available at the moment, but it is on streaming platforms. So I say to people, go out and listen because there's some really good music there.
I think you've done some great work here because he is an artist that should be heard.
I think so. I agree with that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. It should be heard.
You're welcome anytime back here,
Thank
Mark,
you
on
very
it.
much, Joe.
And
Thanks.
if you want to come back like in 6 months when the book has done some work, we can do that too.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
Thanks so much, man.
Okay, cheers.
Yep. Bye-bye.